Well, here we are with our Sunday school lesson for May the 22nd. And the first thing that if you've been watching these lessons over the last couple of years or watched any of them, you know that I've changed venues. I've changed venues from the fact, and I've shared this before, that I typically do these lessons from my office. And my office shares adjoining walls with other businesses, and so I try to record the lessons either early in the morning or later on in the afternoon when people are not in and not as active, because I don't want to get a lot of background noise. Well, today's the exception. And so I'm actually doing this lesson in the middle of the day, and there's a lot of activity going on, so I moved to another room in my office. So I'm still in my office, but I'm just in a different place in that office. The lesson today, and it was interesting to me when I first realized that it was going to be out of the book of Joel. The title is The Redemption of Creation. It comes from Joel 2:18 through 26, and the purpose statement is to celebrate God's redemptive work in creation. Now, I will admit, and everybody has spent time in the Bible. You've read different books of the Bible. You've heard sermons from different books in the Bible. But Joel is not one of those books that I've spent a lot of time in. I mean, I actually looked it up to see that Joel was a prophet, and then I started thinking about it, and I said, yeah, well, maybe I have heard about Joel, but I can't remember ever spending a lot of time in the book of Joel. So it was interesting as I began to look at this book and try to put this book into context as it relates to our lesson. As I say, it comes from Joel 2, and the passages are 18 through 26. Now, to give you some perspective, the people of Israel had been invaded. They had had this locust infestation that had completely destroyed their crops, so they didn't have crops. They had no food. They didn't have any way to make a living. They had no grain offerings. Their livestock were dead or starving. They couldn't make sacrifices, which they felt was important. I mean, they couldn't eat. They couldn't work. And so here comes this prophet Joel. And I'm going to read the passages, going to read different scripture passages out of the lesson. And I'm going to jump to 21. He comes along and he says, "Don't fear, fertile land, rejoice. Be glad, for the Lord is about to do great things." Now, when you're at your deepest moment of frustration, of fear, is that what you want to hear? I mean, they had to look at Joel and say, get real. I mean, this is awful. It can't get any worse. And he's saying, it's not that bad. Cheer up. Turn that frown upside down. Be happy. It's okay. Don't be afraid. And they have to be responding, Joel. I mean, we don't have the food to feed our children. You're telling me not to be afraid? Be glad and rejoice? I've lost everything. And now you're telling me to be happy about it? Oh, the Lord's done great things. Well, if this is an example of the great things the Lord has done, I don't want any part of it. Have you ever felt that way? In your deepest, most troubled times, you think about, you know what, God, I know I'm supposed to be happy. I know I'm supposed to be appreciative, but things are so bad. I mean, if this is a time to be happy, I don't want a time when I'm supposed to be sad. I mean, it could be that a doctor tells us something that we don't want to hear, and as we age, that's more and more going to happen. Maybe we've lost a child or a spouse or a parent and had to say goodbye, and had to say goodbye way too soon. I mean, I use the term a lot that sometimes life gets in the way and licks the red off our candy. And things are just not working out the way we hoped, the way we dreamed. Maybe you've got your own locust invasion going on in your life right now in our country. We're struggling with the fact that inflation is as high as it's been in decades. We're experiencing that. Gas prices. I mean, there's not a day goes by that somebody isn't talking about the gas prices. I have people asking me every day, what about the housing market? What's going to happen? What's going to happen with interest rates? We're concerned. We're afraid. And so in the middle of all of that, we have God's word from Joel saying, don't be afraid. He's saying, be glad, rejoice. And the reason he's saying that is because no matter what kind of challenge we've got, you're going through, no matter what it is, the Lord has done great things for us. So verse 21 that I jumped to, and I did it for a purpose, was because it's right in the middle of 6 promises that the Lord is making to his people. And we have to ask, how is it possible to not be afraid when so many things seem to be going wrong? And the answer always comes back, because God is in charge. Now let's go back to the beginning of our passage. We read in 18, "Then the Lord became passionate about this land and had pity on his people." Now that's an interesting term to say, passionate, and I looked at a couple of different commentaries, and they said that it's got nothing to do with land. It's got nothing to do, God doesn't need land. He created the land. But what God got passionate about is keeping his promises. And Joel is reminding his people that God is passionately fired up about keeping his promises to his chosen people. So when he promises that he'll never leave us, when he promises that he'll never forsake us, he's passionate about making that happen. Now, does that say that we'll never have challenges? Absolutely not. We don't live in a bubble. We live in a world where we get impacted by decisions that we make, because we have the ability to think and make decisions. We get impacted sometimes by the decisions other people's make. The people that we were getting ready to go through another election, and we'll go through that election cycle. There will be people on one side that will say, this is what we need to do. There will be people on the other side say, this is what we need to do. Somebody gets elected, and those people will be making decisions. And sometimes we're impacted by the decisions they make. And then we have to deal with them. But that's just part of life. There were times when the Apostle Paul, he wrote to Timothy that he was hungry, he was hurt, he was cold. He was begging Timothy to send him coats for warmth and some books. We read Jesus himself had nowhere to lay his head. So I think it's important as we look at this lesson that this promise that God gives us to take care of us has nothing to do with cars, vacations, stuff, but it has everything to do with the knowledge that God will navigate us through any and all challenges. And there's times that it's tough to remember that. It's tough when we're dealing with a particularly stressful situation that God's going to take care of us. God tells the people he's going to send them grain, wine, oil. And those were basics they needed to survive. But here's the thing, and I think this is where I have trouble, this is where you have trouble, this is where we're challenged. He tells them that he's going to make them satisfied. He responded to the people. He was passionate about the people. The Lord responded to the people, "See, I'm sending you the corn, new wine, fresh oil, and you will be fully satisfied by it. And I will no longer make you a disgrace among the nations." He says we're going to be satisfied. He's going to make them content. And other than our salvation, isn't that the greatest provision that God can give any of us? I think about that. I think about that in my own situation. I want stuff. I want things. I look at what other people have. Of course I do. You do. Yeah, that's a pretty nice. I saw a Lexus the other day. Somebody was driving. It was a new model. Never seen it before. I thought, oh, that's a nice Lexus right there. But is it fair for me to expect God to give me what I want? Is that what this says? Or do I need to be satisfied that I've got great transportation? I've got an automobile and it gets me where I need to go. Yeah, the other things would be nice, but is that really something I should expect from God? He said he was going to make them satisfied. He was going to give them contentment. And so I think we constantly have to ask ourselves, are we content? Are we being provided for? Do we have shelter over our head? Do we have food to eat? Do we have people to care about us? Do we have friends? Do we have opportunity? Did we wake up today for the challenges of a new day, for the opportunity of a new day? Now keep in mind, again, that the people had just come from a locust invasion, just come through a locust invasion. They came through an army that conquered them. And in verse 20 he says, "I will remove the northern army far from you and drive it into a dried up and desolate land. Its front into the eastern sea and its rear into the western sea. Its stench will rise up. Its stink will come to the surface. The Lord is about to do great things." And he's saying, I know that you're beat down. I know that you're vulnerable. When we're vulnerable, we're at our weakest. We are the most likely to get attacked. Satan looks for our weakness when he wants to attack. A thief doesn't go to a well-fortified business to steal. He goes to a business that he has the opportunity to take advantage and steal, that's vulnerable. And so our enemies see that. And our temptations occur when we're weak, when we take our eye off the ball. And so he's saying here, I'm going to take care of you. You've been through a lot, but I'm going to take care of you. So when you're going through your own personal locust invasion, you're vulnerable, you know you're vulnerable, but God knows you're vulnerable. And let's go on and read in 22. Don't be afraid, animals of the field, for the meadows of the wilderness will turn green. The trees will bear its fruit, the fig tree and the grapevine will give their full yield. Children of Zion, rejoice and be glad in the Lord your God. Now, I can only imagine, again, when I read this passage and I think about this prophet telling the people, and he's using the present tense, that your fields are going to be green, or are green. The fig trees, the vines are going to give their full yield. Now, I've looked at it, and the idea of a fig tree came up the other day, and we talked about it a couple of weeks ago in our Sunday school lesson. And just for fun, I Googled fig trees and I Googled grapevines. And when Jesus is saying this, or when God is saying this, he's saying that, yes, it's happening now, but it takes a fig tree sometimes 6 years to bear fruit. Grapevines take anywhere from 2 to 5 years to bear fruit. And the reality is that once a piece of ground has been devastated and stripped of vegetation, it sometimes becomes a dust bowl. And it's not as fertile as it used to be, but it will become fertile again. And so what Joel is saying here is this is all in process. It's happening for us. It's happening for us. And right now the fig trees are growing, the vines are growing, and they're going to start producing again. You just have to wait and be patient because it's all in God's timing. Sometimes it takes decades for things to get back to normal. I'll never forget, and many of you can probably say the same thing, 2008. I was involved in real estate. I'm still involved in real estate, but it was a horrible time. The whole economy crashed. And there were a number of resulting factors. I had nothing to do with it. But there was a lot of projects that I was involved in that I never saw the benefit from because the market changed. And in 2008, we thought things are never going to get back to normal again. But they did. They did in a big way. 2 years ago, we went through the beginning of this pandemic with the coronavirus, with COVID. And at that time, we didn't know how long it was going to last. We didn't know what the effects were going to be, but it was challenging, and we're still trying to overcome that virus. Not just the impact of the virus itself, but the way it's changed people's thinking, the way it's changed their attitudes. And I say this often, that we're the product of everything that we experience. And as we mature in our journey of faith, as we get further in our journey of faith, we learn more, we react more, we know how to react more. And that's part of it. At some point in time in our life, we accepted Christ. Christ became a central part of our thought process, of who we were. But it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. And God's promise to us is that we're still tilling and planting and working and weeding. We've got this full yield yet to come. And it's guaranteed because it's a promise of God that He's passionate about. So we do need to be glad and rejoice. And then as we read on and we finish up our passage here today, it reads, because He will give you the early rain as a sign of righteousness. He will pour down abundant rain for you, the early and the late rain as before. The threshing floors will be full of grain, the vats will overflow with new wine and fresh oil. And he goes on to say, and he acknowledges the fact that we are challenged. He's acknowledging the fact of these people that I know what you've been through. I understand. Because he says, I will repay you for the years that the cutting locust, the swarming locust, the hopping locust, and the devouring locust have eaten. My great army which I have sent against you. You will eat abundantly and be satisfied, and you will praise the name of the Lord your God. Now, I think that's so important to recognize that and just to reflect on that for a few minutes. God knows when we're challenged. God wants to help us get through that challenge. And it's wonderful to think that He's providing for each and every one of us. He's promised restoration, and He's faithful to keep His promises. But his final promise in this passage is the greatest promise of all. He's promised physical provision. He's promised protection from the enemy. He's promised new life, justice, and full restoration. They're all wonderful promises. That's why God's final promises of relationship is his greatest promise of all. And we see that at the end of our passage. He says, "You will eat abundantly and be satisfied, and you will praise the name of the Lord your God, who has done wonders for you, and my people will never again be put to shame. You will know that I am in the midst of Israel, and that I am the Lord your God, and no other exists. Never again will my people be put to shame. After that I will pour out my Spirit upon everyone. Your sons, your daughters will prophesy, your old men will dream dreams, and your young men will see visions. In those days I will also pour out my Spirit on the male and female slaves, and I will give signs in the heavens and on the earth, blood and fire and columns of smoke." God is promising us that everything will be fulfilled. He's promising that he'll be in the midst of us, and he came in the midst of us in the form of Jesus. He came to walk among us, fully divine and fully human. Jesus Christ, God the Son, came to fulfill that promise of relationship. And he came to make the wrongs in our life right. He came to give us new life in him. He came to protect us from the evil one. And he came to provide for us abundantly and exceedingly. You know, as I was reading this, and I kept having, and I do this when I prepare a Sunday school lesson, I'll think about things I've heard in the past. And I kept thinking about, as I was reading this prophecy, as I was reading the words of Joel, and I remember footsteps, and many of you have read that. Many of you probably have it on a wall in your home. But I wanted to finish our lesson today with that poem, Footsteps. It says, "One night I dreamed a dream as I was walking along the beach with my Lord. Across the dark sky flashed scenes from my life, and for each scene I noticed two sets of footprints in the sand, one belonging to me and one to my Lord. After the last scene of my life flashed before me, I looked back at the footprints in the sand. I noticed that at many times along the path of my life, especially at the very lowest and saddest times, there was only one set of footprints. This troubled me. So I asked the Lord about it. Lord, you once said I decided to follow you, you'd walk with me all the way. But I noticed that during the saddest and most troublesome times of my life, there was only one set of footprints. I don't understand why. When I needed you the most, you would leave me." He whispered, "My precious child, I love you. I will never leave you. Never, ever during your trials and testings. When you saw only one set of footprints, it was then that I carried you." And that's so true. Will you pray with me, my friends? Our gracious Heavenly Father, we just come to you today. We need to be reminded. We need to be reminded that you're with us. Sometimes when life gets in the way and we're challenged beyond anything that we can imagine, we need to remember that it's you that's carrying us. You made a promise, and you always fulfill your promises to take care of us. As we go throughout this week, keep our eyes open to the things you want us to see, our ears open to the things you want us to hear, and our hearts overflowing with that love that you have put in each and every one of us. In His name we pray. Amen. I love you, my friends, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.